I did want to get to some questions out there on social media because you guys have been great listening to the show, and you've sent a lot of questions about the sport in. And so I wanted to get to some of those here at the end. So how about a little bit of Ask Klatt? So we'll take 3 questions here, and let's get started. What do we got?
Helen of Troy 22 says, how is Ohio State number 2 when Marshall put up more points against Notre Dame than they did?
So Helen is bringing up the fact that in my top 10, I had Ohio State at number 2. Helen, it had nothing to do with how many points Marshall scored against them versus Notre Dame, or how many points Notre Dame scored versus how many points Ohio State scored. For everything for me with Ohio State coming into this year was about their defense. Why? Because their track record offensively under Ryan Day is as good as any. They were the top offense in the country last year. They're only going to get more healthy with Jackson Smith and Jigba. They proved that they could run the football. I'm not worried about their offense. All the questions were about their defense. And now in the first couple of weeks, this defense under new defensive coordinator Jim Knowles is giving up, under 70 yards on the ground per game and about 11 points per game. So for me, Ohio State is answering the questions necessary to be in the spot that they're at. That's a really talented team. And granted, Notre Dame didn't play great against Marshall. They played pretty well against Ohio State. They felt like they had a good plan. They were playing fast. I don't know what happened against Marshall. I think that's growing pains of a young coach. But that's why I have Ohio State number 2. And, who else are you putting number 2? Helen? I mean, do you want Helen of Troy? I guess you're a USC fan. Do you want USC number 2? Do you want to talk about defense? Because Ohio State's defense is playing a lot better than USC's defense. I'm assuming you're a USC fan. But that's why I've got Ohio State number 2. All right, who's next?
At Chris Brander 123 says, with an expanded playoff as well as bigger conferences like the Big Ten and the SEC, that leaves less games during the season for the Sun Belt to play the Power 5 schools, correct?
Yes, and maybe no. All of it. All of that can be true. Okay, so Chris Brander, by the way, great movie character. Most likely, with these new conferences, what we're going to get is a 9-game conference schedule from the SEC, from the Big Ten, which they're already doing that now, from the Pac-12 or soon to be 10, Big 12. I mean, however, you're most likely going to get a 9-game conference schedule. Even in the ACC, I think that they'll go to a 9-game conference schedule. So, yes, that means that there's less games available for teams in the Sun Belt or other smaller conferences for that matter. That being said, I do think that there is a sentiment within the power brokers in college football that they understand the importance of playing at least one game. If you're in a power conference, playing at least one game against one of those schools to help with those schools' budgets. Remember, on Saturday, we saw these teams get large payouts to go in there and do what they did. Marshall got paid $1.25 million. App State, they took home a cool $1.5 million and kicked the Aggies' ass. Georgia Southern got paid $1.3 million, just tack it onto the buyout because Scott Frost was shown the door. Those games are really important for those programs because of their budget. So you're going to see one of two things, Chris. You're either going to see a concerted effort that those power conferences would say, okay, we're definitely going to play 9 conference games. We're definitely going to play a 10th game against another power conference, but we're definitely also going to play a hosted game against a team from one of the conferences like the Sun Belt. I think that you'll still see that. I think you'll also see a bit of rev sharing from the college football playoff expansion that goes to some of those schools in order to help with their budgets. Lots of moving parts, but that's kind of what I see, Chris. All right, what's next? Last one, and then we'll get out of here.
At Justin Revord says, which environment was better to be at, this game or the Ohio State versus Michigan game last year?
I think that's in reference. I said the game in Austin was an amazing environment, which it was. But like folks, like the environment in Michigan Stadium last November was totally unmatched. In part because of the environment, in part because of the historic rivalry, and in part because of what the game meant. I mean, it's hard. You cannot be a prisoner of the moment. And while that game Saturday was epic and the environment was epic, that game between Michigan and Ohio State, with the history between those two programs, the history of Jim Harbaugh at Michigan and not getting over the hump of Ohio State, the snow falling, what it meant in the grand scheme of the college football year. The winner wins the East, goes to the Big Ten championship, and based on who they were going to play, likely gets a bid into the college football playoff. Everything was on the line. Jim Harbaugh's legacy on the line. Everything was on the line that day. The snow was falling. It was an unbelievable environment. And I still bring up on my phone, I took a video of just the sea of people on the field. I never knew that you could fit over 110,000 people in the stands at Michigan and 88,000 on the field at Michigan, because there was not one spot of green turf that I could see. Everybody down there singing Mr. Brightside from the Killers. Epic environment. Let's not be a prisoner of the moment. Saturday was phenomenal. It did not touch last year's Michigan-Ohio State game. Hey, thanks for watching. If you enjoy that clip, make sure you click subscribe somewhere down here. From game highlights to exclusive interviews and rankings, we've got everything you need as a college football fan right here. College football on Fox.